What's up? I'm Andrew from the band Rip to Shreds, and today we are going to do Goregrind vocal tutorial with the actual singers on all the Classick records. I'm going to organize this all by band, so if there's a particular band that you want to skip to, check the description. There's going to be timestamps to everything. This video also assumes that you already know how to do harsh vocals, so if you can't, you might want to start looking at another video first and work your way up to being able to do regular death metal vocals before you really try this, because even with the pitch shifter involved, you still need to be able to do regular vocals for Goregrind. Cool? Cool. Let's start with Carcass.
I'm Andrew Lee from the band Rip to Shreds, and we're here with
Carcass.
It sounds a little bit like Napalm Death.
What Sanjeev and Ken were doing wasn't influenced by Napalm. Chuck Schuldiner and Cam Lee, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
McCarb and so. Not Nick Bowen from Napalm. I think Sanjeev and Ken were just doing what they could do. You know, that's all they could do.
And everyone in the band decided to do vocals.
Right. Well, we actually didn't do any gigs before the album came out.
We learned it after you recorded
We
everything.
didn't even know we could play singers anymore.
I can hear a couple of different vocal styles on Reek. Your signature, I guess we can call it a snarl. I think.
That could be Ken.
So Ken also did high stuff.
Yes.
Um,
Bill's a deep guy. I'm
Right.
kind of mid-range and Ken's the falsetto. Ken's very gargled. I just do what I can. Bill can do the proper deep shit. The stupid stuff in the studio, we're trying to do a Rob Halford dream. That's what we were influenced by Macabre, Master, Repulsion, you know what I mean? The first Morbid Angel album,
Oh yeah.
the demo. That's what we were into. We did that on Reek, We were totally into the Evil Dead movie and the voices. We were like, how do you do them? There's Yamaha SPX.
Okay, Yamaha SPX.
And the first US tour, we hired one. We took it on tour with us. We used to use it live. We used to use it live in Europe, but we lost after 2 gigs.
Oh no.
We used to have 2 microphones.
So Bill never used effective vocals live or in studio? You describe Carcass as death metal. And
We are death metal.
the early stuff you don't consider to be like grindcore at all.
That's what other people said about it. I don't mind if people call it that, but it's not really our intention. We were just totally into death metal. I think we quit after the Symphonies.
Was there any particular reason you guys stopped after symphonies?
We lost the SPX 90 on the first tour with this motherfucker from fucking Cynic and Death Sato. I think we lost it in Miami on the second gig.
This man to thank for Goregrind?
No, don't fucking blame. Actually, you have to blame Ken Owen. The person to blame. He's the one who started writing all the lyrics and knowledge, and wrote a lot of the riffs back in the.
Oh yeah, that's true. Okay, so we can blame this man and this man.
Ken Owen.
So for these vocals, when I was trying to imitate Bill, instead of doing like a really full force, like that's what I would do for my normal low vocals. It sounds a little more like he's going, like breathier, more from the throat rather than like from the stomach. But my impression is that that's kind of like an unsafe technique. And I don't know if that might have factored into why we basically don't see Bill doing vocals live anymore. And then on the pitch shifted stuff, I'm just doing like a regular There's really not much special there. I think it's kind of interesting to note that all of the vocalists that Jeff mentioned in the interview are all mid-range to high-pitched in their screams. Actually, it's a little bit hard for me to think of any truly low vocalists in early death metal and grindcore. Maybe deicide demo stuff as Amon. That's probably the closest. And I think Glenn used a pitch shifter at some point, but he doesn't anymore. Carcass might not really have had any recordings of low growls for them to be inspired by.
How's my hair look?
Perfect.
Okay, good. Ross Sewage, Dr. Ross Sewage. Went to 8 years of fake medical school for that. Play in the bands Impaled, Exhumed, and I'm a known quantity to the band Ghoul, though I do not play in that band.
Both Exhumed and Impaled are considered Carcass clone bands. I personally actually don't think that's that accurate.
I would say we are heavily influenced. I don't know if there actually has been a successful Carcass clone band.
Like Pathologist?
County Medical Examiners is probably the closer. Pathologist is actually pretty goddamn close. Usually bands that get lumped into that genre, say like a Hemorrhage or Impaled like that, it's like if you look at the song structure, Ken Owen is not always playing really fast. And Bill Steer is playing a lot of power metal leads that are like tuned down to B.
When you joined Exhumed, that was as a vocalist.
It had a fill-in vocalist that helped him record a demo and played a few shows, Mark. But he wasn't a permanent, and they're like, oh, well, shit, you already drive us around all over town, like hanging out. So you have a car, so you can make it to practice, and you apparently can do vocals. So why don't you come do this anyways? Matt Widener was on bass from Cretan, didn't stay for very long, recorded a demo. He quit / was asked to leave. We had to record the Hemdale split, and they're like, well, you're on bass now.
Actually, I think my favorite Exhumed material is probably the Hemdale split and the split that you guys did with
Pantalones Abajo Merino. Dignities to the Dead.
Yes, and Dignities to the Dead. Because that was like the most grindcore stuff you guys did besides horror, maybe?
Kind of led to a lot of conflict in the band because I really liked that grindcore stuff. Matt was writing his material for gore metal.
It's like all creator.
It's like, we're going to go thrash. And I was like, what the fuck is this wimpy poser bullshit? Because I was like 20.
Exhumed never had any ideas about using pitch shifters.
In fact, I don't think Exhumed used pitch shifters until this last record that we did. To the Dead has some pitch shifted vocals on it.
Where did your inspiration for doing vocals come from?
I would be driving around in my stick shift Honda Civic, putting on Impetigo and Carcass. I mean, Impetigo is just such a fun band, and Steve-O's vocals were so fun going, he had a broad range from going like high screaming, and his like low vocals are just gurgly and gross. They're not like the lowest in the world, but they had a lot of character to them. Really always liked Bill Steer's vocals. So I was like singing along with those.
Were you also like trying to imitate the pitch shifted parts on Carcass? Like, were you aware they were pitch shifted?
Oh yeah, no, I knew what a pitch shifter was. I had, especially in the industrial band I was screwing around with, like kind of a challenge as a kid to be like, how low can I go?
Something Leon mentioned to me when he fills in for Exhumed, tries to imitate each person's voice. When you sing songs that you didn't play, do you do the same thing, or is it just like
live? When I finally did rejoin, I definitely like listen to cadences, and there's probably a couple parts I take a little bit easier, not like doing mine, but doing like something a little different. But I'm definitely not trying to imitate. You're going to hear the songs the way I would be singing them.
Right. How do you do yours?
I've had to like think about this a lot.
Leon said when he was trying to do your style, he would like curl his tongue.
That is definitely part of it. What else did he say? But when I'm trying to do Ross vocals, I look stupid.
He like gets his throat down like this and then tries to force as much air over his tongue as possible.
He's close. At this point, it's completely unconscious. Your Adam's apple, if you want to make it lower, you lower it, right?
Right.
And if you want to make it higher, you put it up higher, like that. Counterintuitively, when I'm doing my low vocals, my Adam's apple's going up here. I'm flexing these neck muscles in here to constrict airflow. So I'm getting the like that, and then curling the tongue, I'm basically putting a subwoofer on it. Or like if you put like something dampening over a speaker, it's like killing the highs. So you're just getting the low tones out. So you go. The tongue is more of a baffle. Let's see if I can do it like with my mouth wide open. The tongue is curled back, but the air is flowing over this contracted, my epiglottis, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's contracting in there. It's pushing up. That's a lot easier to rattle.
I don't think I've ever seen any other death metal vocalist actually think think through it like that.
It took me a long time to even bother thinking about it.
Did you ever watch that one Melissa Cross video, like the Zen of Screaming or whatever? No.
I'm not going to say that there's nothing useful in there. I just think the focus on screaming is maybe a little overstated, but I would be more interested in what David Lee Roth is doing, because that guy still kills. He's still hitting all that shit that I don't think I could even hit as a kid. Mm-hmm. And that's impressive to me. There's something to be said about, like, you know, the art of screaming and stuff like that. I don't want to poo-poo anything too much. As long as you're actually focusing and not taking it casually where you blow your fucking voice out. Right. Like, oh, did you go on stage right after doing cocaine? Well, you're going to sound like shit. That's not taking care of business. Like, just do that right after you play.
Do you do anything special on tour?
Hydrate. Just be regularly hydrated. I mean,
less beer.
Sometimes I'm pounding a bunch of beers on stage. Sometimes I'm on stage, like, having not drunk all day. As long as I've got enough hydration in my body for like a normal amount throughout the day, of actually like, okay, I drink water instead of drinking soda pop all day.
So I knew this was probably going to be like the most difficult one for me to reproduce, especially because I have mostly focused on mid to high range screaming in my own music. More recently, especially on the last Ripped to Shreds album, I started experimenting with more lows just to be able to differentiate myself from Mike when we're trading off vocals. I was having a really hard time following Ross's instructions. So when I tried to put my tongue up, I was able to get some of the airiness in his vocal, but the pitch was always too high. When I do it the way I normally do it, trying to get the pitch as low as I can, my tongue is very flat in my mouth and not at all curled up like Ross would do it. I can get the pitch lower, but I don't have the same airiness. I would probably have to spend many months trying to learn how to do it exactly like Ross. Another thing I also struggle with when trying to do lows, it's very resonant in, I guess, my nasal cavity. It feels like it's around my palate where it's super resonant. I just don't find that very pleasing to listen to. I will always want to like dip that out with EQ around like 2.5 to 3K maybe. I like where it's more your false chords are rattling rather than anything with the tongue. I have not really deeply explored low vocals and tongue placement. So yeah, that's how I did it. For you guys, Ross describes step by step how to do it, so you can try and follow along with what he does.
My name is Grant McWilliams, ex-vocalist of General Surgery. In '87, I got to know of a guy called Muerte. We both love Carcass. We both love Reek of Putrefaction. So we thought, well, let's do some Carcass worship. I think the idea was for him to play drums, me to play bass, Gerd Cabeza vocals, and I think it was Jonas de Roche. We started off trying to do stuff, but nothing really came out of it. So it was, band didn't actually come to fruition until Jocke got involved. Then what's got, they had actually started up again, and by the time I heard about that, they had already recorded Erosive Waffles. Can you rewrite some of the lyrics and come up with some of the new titles? I'm going, before the internet, you couldn't just like Google stuff. I still got my Rosé's Thesaurus somewhere. which was a great thing to use. It was just like, okay, right, corpse. Synonyms, brilliant. And just think of like stupid stuff. How ridiculous can death be?
Right.
How stupid can it sound? You get pestiferous anthropophagia, which I can't even remember what it meant. And then, of course, sending it to Rick, who's going to actually sort out the cover of it. He didn't actually what we said. So it's called pestiferous anthropophagia. But I mean, that's a very Swedish thing. And then we did the rehearsal demo, which is let's see how it can work by doing the songs before we go into sunlight. Of course, we recorded necrology in sunlight.
When you approached your vocals, was that just straight carcass, or did you also have some other...
It would have been straight carcass along with the lead Orion, which is a little bit ludicrous because I don't have that kind of voice. I mean, I sound like an angry Scottish chipmunk. I don't sound like anything like the bowels of Hades or something like that. The high vocals and the low vocals. And in necrology, I did most of both of them. Muerte, he did the really walrus vocals that he did.
Was the unaffected vocals or pitch shifter?
I think actually in necrology we didn't use any effects at all.
Okay.
I actually started using effects when we reformed in this century. Sometime around 2004, 2005, I bought an effect pedal. It was the one with multiple pedals.
Was it
backwards
purple?
And forwards. Yes.
Vocal 300.
That's probably it.
Yeah.
Stupidly enough, I thought this would be great to have in front of me on stage, where you've basically got me, edge of the stage, and then a bunch of drunkards with beer. You know, understand what happened then. It didn't get completely ruined, but one of the pedals stopped working. You'll get, so just got a pitch pedal instead. I think I had that in Gothenburg. I'd basically just gone, brilliant, let's just turn everything up, go completely nuts. And we're going to do a sound check, get the microphone, put the pitch shifter on, just go, you can actually feel the floor vibrating. That was basically all people heard, just a vocal rumbling I could do. Very like high pitched kind of stuff. But I really need help if I'm going to be doing the deeper stuff. The pitch pedal, it's a necessity.
What was the change between the 90s and Reformed? Because you didn't use the shifter at all on the early stuff.
Age. We were much younger. Necrology. It was recorded in 1990. I was 16 years old. I could do a hell of a lot more with my body, my voice. We were in school. We were studying, or we were unemployed. You had time to actually rehearse and just muck around. We get into late 20s, early 30s. I was asked to do the guest vocals on the list, the Dead Infection cover. And I'm going, oh no, I can do this. We get to the rehearsal room. They put on a Dead Infection. So I'm going, oh, okay, right, this is all right. Yeah. What I'll do is I'll just go out into the corridor outside and just walk back and forth and see if I can actually like get my vocal cords absolutely raw. That's when I realized that you've actually got to consistently rehearse.
Your pitch pedal, do you go down like 12 or in between setting?
Well, I'm just going to go, I don't know. Okay. He's the mastermind because he's got a great ear for these things. And he can go, oh no, you got to turn that down, you got to turn that up and do this. And if it'd been me, I just goes like, oh no, great. Let's turn these up to the maximum. Put it this way, I hate the mono sound. Because it's so clean. I want something that you can actually hear it going all over the place, hear the reverb, all the crap. I mean, that's why I loved the fourth copy of Horrified album.
Right.
Where it was unmastered and everything. It just sounded like complete shit, but it was awesome.
Yeah.
That's why I love old Carcass as well. I mean, I know they don't like it. They think it was, we were trying to be death metal, blah, 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 blah. But that's not what I got into. I got into the fact that they could combine such good songwriting with this really, really abrasive sound.
The stage outfits, because I noticed you guys played with the aprons and the blood and everything. Where did that come from?
That was one thing we didn't want to do, like Carcass. It must have been the Symphony of Sickness tours when they were in Stockholm, 1990 maybe. It's basically seeing three guys on stage rehearsing. That doesn't really do it for me. I'm also a big Alice Cooper fan. What can we do that can be a little bit more interesting? We don't have to be gore. What can we do that can at least make things a little bit more fun for people to come and see? My stepfather had the big welding gloves, he had the big apron in the Victorian era where they actually started working with dissection and mortuaries and stuff. Distinguished men with their clean shirts and ties and basically digging out blood and guts. That's why I always did the shirt and tie.
So for the most part, I think the vocals in this are pretty straightforward. I isolated the center channel and pitch shifted everything up 12 steps to try and find the exact settings of the pitch shifter that was used on this track, and it's just an octave down. I often do that to try and reverse engineer what kind of settings were used on a track. My biggest difficulty is if something like a flanger has been applied, because that really fucks up the sound, and it's difficult to know if you've found the right pitch offset when the flanger's in there. Almost all of the pitch shifted parts in this track, I think, is a pretty standard, like, kind of like a mid-range-ish type scream. At the very end, it sounded to me like it was lower than normal, but it didn't seem like they would change pitch shifter settings in the middle of recording or performing like Last Days of Humanity might. So I just went for a low and had that pitch shifted down. A big part of the sound of the vocals on this track would be all the vocal layers, right? Because it's not just Grant's performance. On this record, they have everyone except for Jock doing backup vocals. So there's a huge amount of layers. That's really why the Left Hand Pathology album sounds the way it does. Now, when I look at their live videos, like the footage from the start, which is from their Japan tour with Impaled and Butcher ABC in 2006, only the guitarist is on backup vocal duties. I suspect they would have pared down the vocal arrangements a lot in a live setting. So unfortunately, Andre declined to appear on video, but he was kind enough to answer all my questions, and given that Lymphatic Phlegm is probably one of the most unique Goregrind bands ever, I couldn't really leave him out. So we start with, where did he get the inspiration for his vocals? And he says probably with Carcass, early 90s, Dysentery from Germany, Exulceration, and our country mates of Rotting Flesh and Flesh Grinder. What effects pedal did you guys use? And he says, all Lymphatic Phlegm stuff was recorded with the Digitech RP5 multi-effects, and it was always 12 steps down. Only on Blood Spattered, it was 24 steps down. What does your normal vocals sound like before it goes through the pitch shifter? And Andre says, just listen to any Awful release other than the first album. It's just regular death metal low vocals. Is there any other effects like flangers or phasers or anything? And he says just some reverb on it. Also, what are some Goregrind bands around now that you're into? And he says nowadays there's not really that many bands playing real Goregrind. He likes like Meat Spreader, Organ Failure, Rawhead, Incinerated, Hyperemesis. In Brazil, it's totally dead since like Neurovisceral, Exhumation, and Feculent Gorgon quit. Cool, let's try it out. So I think it's important to note that in the video, we can see Andre is holding his mic like this. This, if you've watched the earlier Audio Principles video, you know that this will alter the frequency response of the mic because we're blocking off ports down here. So this is going to significantly change the sound of the mic. But beyond that, the vocals here are very straightforward. There's no flanger, there's no phaser. It's not like particularly vomitous. It's just a regular mid-low-ish type of vocal. If you watch the full Awful video, I would say he sounds a little bit like Cam Lee. That's pretty much it. We are joined by
Erwin. Last Days of Humanity. I joined in 2001, I think.
The first thing you were on was a stoma split.
Yeah, that's right.
Stoma split, ecstasy of swallowing, the advanced hemorrhaging EP.
Yeah, Dutch assault and suppository. Yeah.
I think my strongest impression of you as a vocalist actually is that YouTube video from like the 2004 show.
Oh, Nijmegen. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good video. I like the. It was done twice. The second one, where the sound has been upgraded, is a lot better. I think so. A good recording.
Because I started getting into metal like late 2000s, so I think YouTube videos like made a lot of impression on me. When was the first time that you ever heard like pitch shifted vocals? Because when you joined Last Days, they would have been kind of already well established.
Yeah, 88 there, something like that. And that's where when Agatocles started coming up, they used pitch shifter too. Carnage, their They Might Have Lost demo was one of the first ones. Carcass, putrefaction, of course. And Sisma, Swarming of the Maggots, it's the really early stuff that got to me. It was pretty new back then. That made a good impression on me, and I really loved the vocals, and it never was for me about lyrics or anything. I look at pitch shifted vocals more as like a solo instrument than really singing.
With Zizma and Reek, I feel like it wasn't really as extreme as it would become. Do you remember when they started sounding kind of modern, like later on Regurgitate?
When it was starting to get more noisy and extreme, I think it was in mid-90s. I think it was a little bit of a grindcore death metal kind of thing, and then it got more and more extreme, and then anal cunt and stuff like that. It was the noise stuff that was coming in, and I think if you melt all that a bit together, then you get more the extreme stuff that we had in the early 90s, like the demos of Regurgitate.
Before Last Days, you had Smes. Did you have any other bands that like didn't actually put out any demos or anything like that?
No. I helped a little with the demo of Smegma from Holland. That was really the first thing that was really something serious was released. I've been in a band that was called Scrotum. It was a bit fun grindcore-ish. Yeah, it never was recorded and released.
When you started doing pitch shifted vocals, did you figure that out on your own, or maybe your friends in other bands showed you?
Both, really. There was the stuff that you hear about pitch shifter, and then you start looking for pitch shifters, but then you check them out. There's things that you can make them more extreme and stuff like that. I like that experimenting. Sometimes people will ask me, can you send me any settings or something? I don't know all those. I just screw around with the buttons, and that's what I like to do, just experiment and get the most extreme thing that I can get.
Do you remember which ones? So like I have a Vocal 300. No, that one's like kind of popular. Maybe also Boss Super Shifter.
Yeah, I think I had the Boss Super Shifter for Smes in the beginning. And after that, I got a Boss. I can't remember what it was. It was some sort of shifter. I didn't really like it, so I sold it again. The Boss I borrowed from Steven of Rump Prop and Bowel Crust and stuff like that. And then after that, I was, kind of hooked on the Digitech, because not the most extreme maybe, but you can get a wide variety of things with it.
The whammy?
Yeah, before that I had another one. It was more of a guitar or keyboard kind of digital. So it had a lot of stuff on it, like I wouldn't even use, but I just happened to have the chance to buy that one, and yeah, it had a whammy on it too. And then I'm broken now. I got a Digitech whammy, just a regular.
Something a lot of people mentioned to me is, how do you prevent it from feeding back? Like the drums are so loud, guitars are so loud, and then that goes into the mic, and then everything's just a mess. Did you all have to deal with that live too?
With rehearsal, I usually just put the mic down and then just start messing with the buttons again. Down, it's not picking up all the high stuff. That helps a lot. Plus, when I sing, I hold my microphone, the ball of my microphone, and there's just a little hole that I sing, and that helps too. And you can close it off when you have to. There's an on and off button on my microphone that I sometimes use if it's for quite a long time or something like that. And I just turn off my microphone. A few of those things. And yeah, just get the high tones out of it a little. Not too much, because then the vocal itself is going to be muffled. And
when you recorded, you always like this?
Yeah, but then I have my headphones on. So when I record and there's no external sound coming in. It's just a habit now that I use my microphone like that.
When I do my pitch shifter, I'm always playing guitar, so I can't.
You gotta, yeah. I have tried to cover it up and put a little tube on it, like big enough to shout in, but you can aim it a little.
Yeah.
That was for at home when I didn't have my headphones. Kind of works, but it looks silly.
Did you ever add other pedals in your chain, like reverb or delay or like flanger?
I love flanger. If you have 3 songs with a flanger in it, it's kind of overdoing it. Then it takes away from magic. But I really like a flanger, so I've used that a few times. Mostly with reggae pieces and smash or something like that. I didn't really use it for last days. An equalizer, I've used that too. And a super overdrive, but you can't put those two. It's a bit like a distortion, but if you put it really low, then you get a crackly monster voice.
I have set down 1 octave. Is that where you would normally do, or you would go down another octave?
I think I would go another, like my whammy goes steps of 2. So I think it goes to the 3rd one down. And then, but I got my pedal on it, so I can move it up and down from there.
In a performance, you're going to be constantly changing the setting.
Maybe I would, but it goes under the music if you put it up too high or too low. The sound man has to put your volume up, and then if you put other vocals on the next song, it could be really loud. So I usually try to stick to 1 vocal. I used 1 double vocals in Nijmegen. It's in the last, The Dead Infection, End of Love. I start off with a louder voice. I didn't really like it. And you see me bending down and switching it to the other because I like the other one better. Just a bit. It was getting too loud.
A lot of people, they're very curious. No, what does it sound like without the pitch shifter?
When we did the split for Stoma, it was just Mark and me doing the vocals over the music, and we both had headphones on, but sometimes there was a part where Mark had to go back or something, and I would just take off my headphones just to give my ears a little bit of air and stuff like that. And then I would just... No, and then it sounds so much different if you then... But yeah, sometimes you have to make weird sounds to get it sounding awesome through the pitch shifter.
Something I do a lot is I gargle spit, and then I feel like if I do the low vocals, it never sounds right through the pitch shifter. I have to do like very high screams. Have you noticed any like changes in how people use pitch shifter, or it's kind of been the same since the 90s?
I don't know. Yeah, I think what Rump Prop has done with the high vocals, they got that from Incision from Sweden. Yeah, those that kind of, but through the pitch shifter in it. I like that. I think it's only Rump Prop who's done that after Incision. And Rump Prop also used just swallow some water and just gurgle. And in that song, things like that I can really appreciate. But it's not going to be very different because they got so many settings on the pitch shifter, and you can go a bit higher and a bit lower, more gurgly and a bit more muffled or something. There's not much things that you can really do with it other than put a flanger on it or get the watery, bubbly thing that Mark has.
What's next for you now?
Been doing some guest vocals, and I've been kind of laying low for the rest.
No secret new live bands?
No, I wish. Who knows, maybe in the future. I'm not done yet.
Okay, so that was quite a bit different than I normally do my pitch shifted vocals. You can see at the end, I was trying to do that trick with the Diet Coke instead of water that Erwin mentioned Rumpa using, and ended up with a stain on my shirt. When I pitch shifted the track up to try and figure out what kind of vocalizations he was using on this track, I noticed that he's actually singing along with the riff. Like, so we go bum bum bum, yeah 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 yeah. So that's what I was imitating. Yeah, 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 yeah. That is something very different from what I normally do with pitch shifters. It was like, or or those are the type of sounds I normally make. So it was very different for me to try and do it like this. I messed around with it. It didn't sound like minus 24. It sounded wrong when I put my vocals down 24 steps. So I left it at an octave. I think it ended up sounding pretty close to what Erwin did on the original song. But yeah, there's very wide range of different vocalizations that you can do to get more unique sounds out of a pitch shifter. I still really want to know what Rickard from Regurgitate does.
Oh, Matthew J. Rositano. What did I do? I played bass and yelled in Hemdale and also Accept Death.
Where did the name Hemdale come from?
Oh, there's a movie called Vampire's Kiss.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And
Yes.
production company was named Hemdale. And then just one day when I was just like, look, I saw the box and I said, well, that'd be a fun name for a band. I was going to do it with Wedge from Nine Shocks Terror. And we played just a couple times. And then Mike and Craig and we did a band before that. It was like a bad thrash band. They said, oh, we like the name Hemdale, so let's use it. I'm like, okay.
Do you consider Hemdale to be a Goregrind, or is it death metal? Is it grindcore?
Well, yeah, I guess grindcore death metal with gore.
It wasn't quite so rigidly defined back then, right?
No. I'm looking back. There wasn't a lot of bands. I mean, obviously, Carcass started the gore stuff, and then we liked that vein. I had a friend named Wedge, H100s, Nine Shocks Terror. He turned me on to all these crazy bands. We'd go over to his house and listen to him. He first played me the early Grave demo stuff, and just how down-tuned. I mean, you could hear the strings slapping off of the pickups, and it was just so cool. I was really into Brutal Truth, first record, just the speed and everything, and I was like, I just want to be the most extreme, like the most down-tuned and the most, like, as fast as we could go type of band.
You guys were tuned to G or F?
G was the for In the Name of Gore.
Did you find it difficult to like keep the instruments in tune back then? Because they didn't have like specialty baritones or seven strings in like 94, did they?
No, not that I don't. Mike, believe it or not, used tape on his springs, on his whammy bars, whatever setup that was. And he stayed in tune all the time. And I would stick pennies or nickels under the adjustments to raise them up off the fretboard. G's not as bad as going down to E.
When it came to the vocals, when you were trying to make it as low as possible,
Let me think. I was influenced by Brutal Truth big time, so I got my voice low as I could, and then ridiculous screams. I thought they were terrible, but Mike and Craig loved them, so I kept doing them. The lows there was like a band called Decrepit from around our area, and this guy named Rob, his lows were unbelievable, so I like to try to be like, get his low sound. We should probably tune back up to G again. I think that ruined my voice trying to get down to the E. Yeah, it's like my voice is trying to always match the pitch.
who did you go to recording for back then?
Craig did it. You know, he had the label Visceral Productions, and then he did it In the Name of Gore. He actually had Scattered Remnants. He was going to put out the next Incantation.
I think he had like the Nile
Yeah,
demo.
he had Nile. He was
some
going to
exhumed
put
stuff.
their stuff out.
Anything coming up soon for y'all?
Like I said, we're working on that. Accept Death, that's never coming out. No, it's going to come out. And I got a couple drummers working on songs. So I've been talking to Mike actually about trying to do something. He's trying to talk Craig into doing something. So yeah,
Shit.
we'll see though. I'm not making any promises.
So something I've noticed about a lot of low vocalists after having seen a bunch of like multi-tracks, usually it doesn't sound quite as low as you might think. If you look at what Matt does, it's regular exhale growling, like and if you don't want to get into stupid deathcore stuff like tunnel throat or gutturals or whatever, I think there's very few examples of brutal death metal type singers in Goregrind. But yeah, I think this is about as low as I can go. My voice has gotten a little bit lower over the last couple of years. I'm honestly not quite sure if I can physically make my low vocals much lower, at least with my current technique. If I A-B back and forth like between the record and the live audio and mine, I think it's like in the general range. Relax your throat down here, make this vibrate. Larry Wang sticks his jaw out and uses his lips to create more resonance in his mouth. I think those are just the general ideas you will have to play with to get a similar type of sound. I am here with Adam from the one and only Anal Birth.
What's up, Andrew? Thank you for having me.
When did you first hear pitch-shifted vocals?
I'm pretty sure it was on Carcass's Putrilage album. I bought that sometime in the early 90s, like 93 maybe.
By 93, Dead Infection and Regurgitate already had their demos out.
Yeah, I heard both those bands probably only a year later. And The Last Days of Humanity, when I heard their Human Atrocity demo, that was the thing that made me be obsessed with pitch shifters and want to get one.
That one's the one after their Noisecore demo, or is Human Atrocity?
No, it's the second one. It's the first one where he started using the pitch shifter on his vocals.
Was Anal Birth like the first thing you did, or did you also have some like other small projects before it?
No, I had a lot of, I guess what would be considered shitcore nowadays, but back then, I was a broke kid, so me and my cousins and my brothers would do all these stupid projects where we're banging on pots and pans, playing cardboard guitars with rubber bands, just whatever we can get our broke little hands on. I didn't get my first guitar until I was 13. It was funny, I couldn't afford a pedal, but I plugged into my dad's stereo, into the mic jack. And no joke, the distortion sounded just like Lauder from Canada.
Dude, that's sick, man.
Which is a band I was obsessed with. I still am.
Yeah, I mean, Strapato is really ahead of its time. When did you first get your hands on like a pitch shifter? And what was it, like one of the old Boss super shifters or like a Digitech Whammy?
My first pitch shifter was a Boss pitch shifter / delay pedal. And I bought that, I think, in the very first Anal Birth recording I did is Very Lost. There was a rehearsal before the Infant Butchering demo. People have been asking me for it, but the problem is when I got my drum machine, I recorded Infant Butchering over it. So my cousin's the only one that's ever heard it beside me. I use drum pads, like, you know, the electronic drum pads.
Yeah, yeah.
The ones you hit with a stick. It's like the 4 pads, and you just bang on them. It was that, and yeah, I tried my first pitch shifter out on that. I actually had that pitch shifter for a while. I used that. I had that up till at least the year 2000. I got it in 95, so I had it for 5 years. And after that, I bought something called a Zoom RFX 300, I believe.
Right.
I'm actually getting that back from a friend. My friend of mine actually got that back for me, so I'm going to be getting that back.
Yeah.
So that was the second pitch shifter I ever owned.
Ioannis from Active Stenosis, I think he told me he used a Zoom G something for a really long time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the Zoom RFX 300. It has not just pitch shifter, but it has almost every vocal effect you can imagine. 3 different reverbs on it, probably more than that.
And you would have been recording to like a 4-track kind of thing?
Yeah, a Tascam Porta 03 or Porta 02. They kind of dumbed it down over the years. I think it started out as a Porta 03, and then they dumbed it down to the Porta 02, where it had just a little bit less things that you could use on it. It's still a good recorder. This thing's broke down like a son of a bitch, though. I remember my first one, I had to get it repaired, and it cost like half the amount it cost me to buy it for, and then it broke down again. The one I had after that lasted a little longer, but I have bad luck with 4-tracks. The one I have now is a really shitty Fosticks, but it's actually lasted me a lot longer than the more expensive ones that I've had.
So you're still doing things the old school way with 4-tracks, not recording to like a laptop or anything?
Yeah, no, I did start recording on a laptop because a friend of mine introduced me to BandLab.
Can you imagine having this sort of thing back in like 94, 95?
No, I couldn't imagine. And I was so anti-digital for a while. I mean, I still love analog way better than digital, but I'm not anti-digital. I use it when I have to.
So for me, I think infant butchering was easily the most extreme thing I've heard that early on. Do you remember how other people reacted to it at the time? Like you were mailing out demo tape.
Yeah, I got a couple of people that thought it was cool. Most people didn't like it, though. It's funny as hell because I combined noisecore and Goregrind, and both those scenes really weren't into it seemed like, back then. Like the noisecore guys didn't like it and the Goregrind guys didn't like it. It's funny because it was a combination of both. It eventually caught on. I guess when MySpace was like at its peak, I noticed there were all these gore noise projects that popped up, and literally the only like running gore noise project was me. There were a couple of people that did gore noise recordings here and there, but I was really the only project that did specifically that. I guess in the early 2000s, people were starting to like it. It's still pretty crazy to me.
Yeah, I think it might have been too ahead of its time for people, you know? Because it makes me think of putrefaction in progress. And nothing close to that would come out for another 10 years. But there you were in like 96, and you'd already done something of a similar extremity.
Yeah, and I was very influenced by them too, which was really funny. They were noise back then. They went more into a death grind style, and then went back to noise again.
When I tried messing around with putrefaction in progress recordings, if you take out the snare, you can hear that they're actually still playing their normal songs under it. And I think they re-recorded some stuff from the first 2 albums, but they just cranked up the snare and made it so noisy that it was like pure noise. But for your stuff, were there ever like actual riffs, or was it like bass noise?
A lot of people think I did bass on the early Anal Birth recordings. That's all guitar.
Oh, okay.
I didn't really start using bass until towards the end of like when I brought it back in 2014 to 2016. I didn't use a bass for it until the split with Gruesome Toilet before the last time I called it quits with that project. I know this is a project I keep seeming to bring back because this time around in 2022, my friend John, who runs Barely Breathing Fest, he was asking me to do an Anal Birth live show, the one that we did at the first Barely Breathing.
Right.
That was supposed to be the only thing Anal Birth was going to do, was just that show, and then I had my friend Will help me out on bass, and that was it. But I ended up getting more offers for shows and took them and said, well, the hell with it. Since it's kind of back, I might as well do another album. So we did Top 28 Chapters of Infinite Atrocities, our second full-length album.
How have your vocals changed since the very start of Anal Birth to now?
My throat's just older and drier, basically. All that drinking and smoking didn't help. When I did the New Jersey Gore Fest at the Meat Locker, the pitch shifter wasn't working, so I had to use my natural vocals, and I couldn't believe how good they were sounding, because they usually don't sound like that. Like, they sounded really animalistic. Usually when I try to do vocals with no effects, they end up sounding like, ooh, ooh, but they actually sounded animalistic, which I was very surprised at. I don't know how I got that, but...
Yeah, I mean, the recording you showed me sounded great.
Yeah, actually, that's one of my favorite recordings, to be honest. Even though I love pitch shifter, of course, but like, I didn't know that I could still do something like that naturally.
When you record your pitch shifter stuff, are you monitoring it with the effect on?
If I do it analog, I have the headphones on and I can hear myself, pitch shifter and all, because I really don't like hearing myself naturally. The Meat Locker show is the exception. Usually hearing my vocals without effects, like, it's kind of rough for me to listen to.
Are you doing more of the death metal type, like screaming or growling?
Well, for Anal Birth, it's pretty much an exhale growl, like a low one then a high one. So the roar sound comes from the high one. So for the low growl, it'd be like... And then for the high one that sounds like the roar, it's just me going... And then sounds a lot better with effects, of course.
Do you also experiment with like flanger is super popular.
I usually don't mess with flanger. I have with other projects, but not with anal birth or anything. It's pretty much just straight pitch shifter with those two types of vocals. There's a lot of people in the house I'm living in now, and I was recording here with it would probably like freak everybody out. But
Yeah.
that's why I kind of have to use recording tricks now in certain recordings. Like I have to do it softer and then gain it up later on. When I'm live, it's different. I can be as loud as I want to be. So my live vocals are the best.
When people tell me like, oh, this technique or this thing you do in recording is like cheating, I'm like, hey, it's music, you know?
Yeah, everything I used to make fun of, I pretty much end up doing. Not everything, but, you know, some things. As much as I hate to say it, like some recordings are rushed and they got to get done. My other projects, like worm clogged blisters and liquefied insides, those I do inhale growls. That's not going to make as much noise as like my anal birth vocals. So it's just hard to record anal birth here. So sometimes I have to cheat a little.
So you've got like a pretty wide range of vocal styles that you can do.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I have a super amount, but you know, I do the vocals I showed you for anal birth, and then for any other project is usually the inhale growls. And I've been good at my inhales where I can get them loud enough.
What do you have coming up next for anal birth?
I'm not doing any more splits or demos or anything. I want to do an album, and it's probably going to be the final album. I like everything I recorded, but I want to do the most bass-heavy, devastating, like noisecore album that I possibly can make. For the final album, I'd like to go to this studio that actually still records 16-track analog.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because I love recording on 4-track tape, but the plans I have for recording, like if I did it on that, it would just basically sound like a hum.
Is it still going to be drum machine, or you got like a really sick drummer who can handle that kind of stuff for real?
It's probably going to be a drum machine, and there's going to be a lot of bass tracks. I might even end up playing guitar on it, because my friend who passed away, his Gibson SG guitar, I'm going to hook it up with some really thick strings. I'm going to have Will play bass, and I'm going to have a friend of mine, Matt, play bass, and I might have my friend Brian, who does a lot of harsh noise stuff, do like harsh noise behind everything. I want this to be the noisiest, the most bass-heavy, like mud nightmare of an album it could possibly be.
That sounds sick. Do you have any plans for our Anal Birth World Tour?
It depends. I'm broke. I guess it depends on the offer. I just played at Louisiana. Did the Mardi Gras 2 festival in Louisiana.
Yeah.
The dude flew us out there, let us stay at his house.
Alex is hella dope.
Yeah, no, he definitely hooked us up. I needed that because I lost my job, and playing that show, that really made me feel a lot better.
Best shit about grind is the sense of community and just helping each other out.
Yeah, I definitely felt that there. That's what I like when I walk away from a show, like, man, some good people, some good-ass bands, too. Doesn't hurt either.
Yeah. So for the anal birth vocals, I pitched it up, and at least on the first untitled track of Infant Butchering, I'm not really hearing any low screams. It's mostly like, ah, or yeah, type of yells. So that's what I mostly did on the cover. Something that is important to note, the sound of Infant Butchering is the whole thing at once. It's not just the vocals, because every single time the vocals come in, everything else ducks, like the noise layers and even the drum machine a little bit gets ducked super hard. So I think Porta Studios had compressors, so I'm just not totally sure whether that would be from running it into a compressor on like the master track of the Porta Studio, or if it was simply just like overdriving the tape itself by pushing all the faders up to max. The sound of Anal Birth is as much the production as it is, just the literal settings of the pitch shifter. Because I think it's normal yells or screams or low growls. There's no like a special like bubbling effects or flangers, just really super distorted noise layers and the way that those layers interact with the vocals when Porta Studio is getting pushed too hard.
Currently impaled Terrorizer, Lightbreaker. I do sometimes sub in Exhumed these days. Impaled started off as another band called Infanticide. I wasn't in the band when Septic Vomit came out. I joined shortly afterwards. I was definitely playing guitar and doing vocals on From Here to Colostomy, which is the second Impaled demo. With Shit I Am Adorned. That's a song I wrote in the studio right there, so haha, so funny. It's like the dumbest fucking lyrics ever.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Exhumed and Impaled have never used pitch shifters, right?
The Dead Shall Dead Remain has some pitch shifted stuff. That was back before Ross started doing vocals. So he does vocals on Back to the Grave. Ross did vocals only on that song, so the really low vocals are pitch shifted, and that was me. We all liked early Carcass and Regurgitate, and when I would do those parts live, I would try to imitate it into the mic. I think later on, after Dead Shall Dead Remain, Ross started singing more, and he was doing what would have been like the pitch shifted vocals.
You guys never like tried to do that stuff live with shifters?
Did have the Boss PS2 or whatever. There was a point for sure where we at least attempted it. I think later on, I talked to Ricard from Regurgitate, and he told me about a different pedal that he used that took mic level input and put out line level output or whatever.
The earliest uses of pitch shifter I can remember, obviously, then the Zizma demo. And then after that, maybe Cathically.
There's so many fucking Agathocles releases. I'm not recalling it off the top of my head, actually.
For sure they used it on Razor Sharp Daggers.
Okay.
If they used it before that.
You know, I don't know. I mean, there were bands that were doing it. And it was kind of funny because also back in those days, like, there was a wave of bands that were also putting in their liner notes, no vocal effects used. And like no pitch shifters used and blah, 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 like as if it wasn't totally obvious when somebody was using it. I'm trying to think of the other bands that we were listening to. Was this a demo?
Pathologist?
Sure, yeah, Pathologist and I don't know if Hemorrhage ever did either. They did. That's a good call. I kind of can't remember if they did or not.
I remember Hemdale got super low, but I don't think he ever used.
I think that they were also one of those bands that were like, we didn't use any fucking effects, bro. Maybe they never stopped being active. I remember the drummer was Craig. He was the guy who had the record label that Exhumed was initially on that got bought by Relapse, and that's how Exhumed ended up on Relapse. Visceral Productions, I want to say, something like that. Craig, he was a cool guy. We used to talk to him all the time. All those guys, they were real funny. They would send us like videos of them like pranking each other in their fucking studio and shit.
Remember like what kinds of settings you used?
Down an octave. I want to say that when we did it on Dead Shall Dead Remain, it took the engineer Mo, it took him a while to figure it out. I remember because he did it on his board. He might have been like an early Pro Tools adopter. I think he did it either with like an outboard piece of gear, so it was like the original voices in there and the pitch shifted voice, and we're like, no. We just want the pitch shifted voice. And he finally figured it out. And the other thing that was kind of like, at least for us, that was kind of distinct about it was that I didn't use like my full death metal voice. I used kind of like a Bill Steer, like kind of a like that thing. Because if I used my full voice, it was like too fucked up sounding, and like if I did the Bill Steer, it was like a little more audible what was going on.
Right. What really stood out to me about Reek compared to like Zizma sounds like a modern, like it sounds like it could have come out.
The songs that are cut from Reek that ended up on extra tracks on symphonies, those are like the funniest songs, like the one where they speed up the tape on the vocals and then slow it down. It's like, like it's so fucking stupid. And you can just tell they were like in the studio just like, oh, I did that one again. I'm like, oh, it's fucking bloody nuts, isn't it? You know, it's like, it's so dumb. I don't, whenever I hear that, I'm just like, it reminds me that Jeff was a child at some point.
I feel like a lot of that, like, kind of dumb fun.
Totally. Absolutely. I would love to hear more of that.
On Dead Shall Dead Remain. Were you consciously trying to make it sound like any of the Carcass records?
For my vocals, no. I actually really like Jürgen Sandstrom from Grave, one of my vocal heroes. And this is not quite a deep cut, but you don't hear about this dude that much, but Jan Chris de Koyer from Gorefest. I love his vocals on the first Gorefest record. And I totally was trying to imitate that. On that first record, like I kind of didn't know how to do it, but gradually after that, my voice got more and more similar to his. And then I got back into the grave thing and started doing that sort of voice again. I wasn't personally trying to do the carcass thing except on the pitch shifted stuff.
Okay.
I mean, we definitely took almost every other musical cue from carcass, but vocally, not so much, I don't think. Maybe Sean kind of more so than me. I've done the Bill Steer voice and I've used it, I've done it on records and stuff too, but it's like that one actually, it's in a high part of the throat. It's like right here. That one fucking tears my. It's so easy to do. Like literally anybody can do it without knowing even what death metal vocals are, and fucking. But that one tears my throat up if I do it too much. Jürgen Sandstrom impression. That's somewhere like kind of more in the upper chest area that doesn't bother me as much at all.
So when you fill in for Exhumed, Ross's, but you do it kind of like the same way I heard you. Your grave thing. There's
so many different eras of Exhumed. I kind of try to imitate everybody at least a little bit. My vocals on there too, which are like All Guts No Glory vocals, which for me like pretty low. Matt pushed me. He was like, dude, your voice is way too high. You got to go down lower. And just by the time we were done with that, I was just like, I couldn't talk anymore. It sucked. Yeah, Travis is a funny one too. When we did the Murder Construct record, I had never heard Travis sing in a quiet studio before. I hadn't heard what his voice sounds like, just not in a mic before. And it literally sounds like a guy going like, Durr. It sounds like somebody making fun of a death metal voice or something. Yeah. But he has that breath control. He makes it work.
Have you thought about bringing the pitch shifter back for any of this stuff?
With Lightbreaker, the recording of that first record isn't very good, and I don't know if you can really hear it, but I actually layered the vocals. So I do like kind of my sort of low mid-rangey thing, and then I do a really, really low, like fucking Carl from Nile thing under that, and I layered them together because I'm sure you've played Mass Effect and fucking, you know how
the Turians have a double voice.
Yes, like Garrus has that double voice with the lower voice, and that's like. That's my alien voice. So all the aliens on the record, like my wife also has like recorded with her high-pitched voice and a lower voice under it.
You use the PS1 or like a Digitech Whammy or? What
I did have for a long time was the PS6. Yeah, I actually used that one in Murder Construct, but right now I don't think I have anything. I have the Ricochet pedal, which might do it. I think you can latch with the fucking Ricochet, although it's not really like the best use of it. I don't know that I have a pitch shifter right now. I think I gave it away. I think I gave it to Sean, actually.
So you mentioned Hemorrhoid. Like, do you keep up with like other newish gore bands or?
I want to say Human Effluence is local here too, and
they're
pretty good.
Super.
Yeah, total like Last Days fucking type stuff.
When I listen to a lot of new gore band, not really sure like the vocals that stayed the same last 30 years.
What has turned me off about newer Goregrind is that bands just do high pitched vocals, and it's like Carcass got objectively worse, I guess, when they only had one vocalist. Don't get me wrong, like those albums are fine. I definitely like the low high back and forth.
Similar to general surgery, the layering of vocal parts is a big factor of why Impaled sounds the way they do. And especially now that they have Sean, Ross, Jason, four. They have four vocalists on stage now. So they can kind of get really over the top with their arrangements. The start is, your standard like, snarl-ish mid-high. And then when the blast beats start, that's layered with Leon's pitch-shifted vocals. And those I did like the crappy Bill Steer style, like, ugh. And then pitch-shifted, it sounds like this. And then that's followed by a couple of just pitch-shifted parts. At the end of this, I didn't do the whole song, I just did the first minute. When the blast beat comes back in, that's when I guess Leon is doing his grave impression. You know, normal low vocals. Yeah. No special processing on the pitch shifter there. It's just -12, no phaser, flanger, or anything. Thanks for making it to the end. RTS is going to be on tour at the end of the year in Taiwan and Japan, and Hokugo Grind Time will be also performing on select dates, ending at the Asakusa Death Fest in Tokyo in November. And hopefully I will also get to interview Jaro from Dead Infection there, along with Harlan from Body Slave Broken, and start working on part 2 of this video. If there's other classic singers that I missed, I promise I tried to contact them, and they either declined or were just not reachable. So if you can get me in contact with the dude from Zizma, by all means, please send him my way. Peace.